Welcome to SVG-TV News for Thursday, April 2nd, 2020. I am Rochelle Baptiste with the details. SVG recorded its second COVID-19 imported case, which was announced yesterday afternoon by the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment. On the radio today, Prime Minister Dr. Gonzalez said the person who recently returned from the U.S. breached quarantine orders and that the Ministry of Health is currently conducting contact tracing. As we hear in this report by Larissa Pugsley-Kidd, the community where the person resides is now on edge as it is believed that the majority of residents were exposed to the virus.
A woman who resides in New York and came home last week, Wednesday, March 25th, was tested positive for the novel coronavirus. The result was announced yesterday in a news release issued by the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment. The ministry said the woman and all the other passengers on her flight were in mandatory quarantine from the time of her arrival in SVG and that she reported symptoms on Saturday, March 28th, when a sample was taken for COVID-19. On condition of anonymity, residents told SVG-TV News that the woman was seen in the community on Friday afternoon walking about, meeting and greeting people. On radio today, Prime Minister Dr. Gonzalez said it was the residents from the community who informed the authorities about the woman's action as she had breached quarantine.
These had gone there. The person had come in on the 25th. By the Friday afternoon, the authorities had gone to the home. And Saturday they went back again.
The Prime Minister said the woman's passport was taken away and informed that possible sanctions can be taken for breaching quarantine. However, he did not say what those sanctions are likely to be. The Prime Minister said the Ministry of Health has given names of persons in quarantine to the police and will also be passed on to justices of peace in the area.
In addition to citizens doing it, justices of peace could feel they have an additional obligation and responsibility because they're about the community to report it. Not because a quarantine is voluntary. It means that it's not mandatory because the choice you're given is, look, we can get a court order against you or you can decide that you're going to stay in it.
Dr. Gonzalez said that he was informed that the medical condition of the woman seems to be improving and that the Ministry of Health has begun contact tracing.
Her cough by yesterday had gone, and one is hoping that her condition improves, but they're doing all the tracing.
Information reaching us is that residents in the community where the woman is now on the mandatory quarantine are panicking about their own health, fearful that they too might have contracted the virus as some persons were in close contact with the woman. Other than their health, some residents have been expressing concern on social media on how they are being treated after their community was identified to be the area where the COVID-19 patient resides. Some persons complained that some omnibus operators were refusing to transport them, among other forms of discrimination. The country's positive case was among 11 samples sent to the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, for testing. 4 of the samples were rejected by CARPHA as they did not meet the testing criteria. Prime Minister Gonzalez made it known today that they are not testing persons who do not have symptoms of COVID-19.
Even though persons with whom you're close don't have the symptoms, you still send those samples, but CARPHA say, listen, unless you have the symptoms, we are not testing. Because when they send the data sheet down with the samples, what I've been advised is that you have to list whether the person has symptoms, what symptoms they had.
In Wednesday's news release, the Ministry of Health further noted that they received medical clearance for the country's initial confirmed case of COVID-19. In order for medical clearance to be issued, 2 successive negative test results had to be received in relation to that patient. The ministry said these 2 successive negative results have been attained. Thus, there is now 1 active case of COVID-19 in SVG. For SVG-TV News, Larissa Pugsley-Kidd.
Opposition leader Dr. Godwin Friday has expressed concern that the government has not heeded calls to close the country's borders in light of the threat of COVID-19. In an address broadcast on SVG-TV last evening, which was recorded before the health authorities disclosed that the country registered a second case of the deadly virus, the opposition leader said it is important that the government close the borders to all but essential personnel.
Friends, it makes sense to secure our borders for a while. This would allow us to deal with the situation inside the country without having also to manage new arrivals and worry about what might come in on the next flight or on the yachts that enter our ports at Walilabu, Kingstown and Blue Lagoon. Our situation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines of having only one confirmed COVID-19 case should not lull us into a false sense of security. For even if we manage to put out a spark in our own house, we must acknowledge that the fire continues to rage outside and that it still threatens to engulf us. In fact, that threat grows greater, not less, day by day. So clearly, we are not out of the woods, not by a long shot. This means we must do all that we can to protect our people.
Dr. Friday also called on the government to review its policy of in-home isolation or self-regulated quarantine, noting that it could be a dangerous practice because it is unenforceable.
The present system of in-home isolation or self-regulated quarantine is dangerous because it is unenforceable. Even when the authorities seize the passports of people on arrival, as is being done in some cases, this cannot guarantee compliance with the quarantine requirements. And a guarantee of compliance, not a mere likelihood of compliance, is what is required in the present circumstances. We must ensure that all persons observe the quarantine fully. The stakes are simply too high to have it otherwise. This calls for a government-operated isolation facility to house all new arrivals for the 14-day quarantine period. It is the only way to protect the public from potential harm and prevent the spread of the virus in our country.
The opposition leader reminded Vincentians that they are not powerless and that there are effective ways to fight against the spread of COVID-19.
Stay at home as much as possible. This is critical for older persons and persons with health problems such as diabetes, hypertension and asthma. Younger, healthier persons can volunteer with the necessary precautions to help the elderly and vulnerable members of our communities by delivering their groceries and medication. Now that they need us most, we must not fail them. If you can work from home, please do so. Employers, make the arrangements with your employees, especially with those in the at-risk categories. Online tools are available to facilitate staff meetings and to supervise work so that satisfactory levels of productivity are maintained. We are a fun-loving, sociable people. The evening lying with friends, the house party, the beach picnic are part of who we are as a people and come out easily, especially in the young. But the circumstances in which we find ourselves now require us to change our behavior for a while.
SVG's premier cultural festival, Vincy Mass, has been cancelled with the hope of having a summer festival in August. This was announced on radio today by Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonzalez. Vincy Mass was scheduled to be launched on May 2nd, 4 weeks from now. According to the Prime Minister, Cabinet approved the cancellation, which was based on advice by the Mass, Pan and Calypso components to the Carnival Development Corporation, which was forwarded to the Ministry of Tourism, Sports and Culture.
And a lot of the reasons are linked to things like they need to prepare. In the uncertainty, they can't do the preparation, and a lot of different things. And the people wouldn't get the money and a lot of things. And I believe one mass band, somebody told me that Mirage is not coming. So the decision of the cabinet is to accept the recommendation to cancel Carnival 2020 as it has been conceived.
The Prime Minister said he remains optimistic that a summer festival could be held in August depending on how the situation unfolds with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Summer festival, people might call it carnival still, but it wouldn't have, clearly not as it is conceived with all of these big mass bands and the like. And where we have 10 years of Vinci Mass, the festival might be over a 5-day period. It might be way down in August, if the circumstances admit for that sort of a thing, because I tell you, when this COVID passes, there is going to be a lot of pent-up frustrations, Already, thoughtful people are talking about the psychological damage done during this time, and release that people will want. A catharsis, a cleansing. Some may find the cleansing in a spiritual revival and awakening.
Dr. Gonzalez said provisions are in place for those who will be affected as a result of the cancellation of Vinci Mass this year.
We had a package for cultural artists, fellas who sing and dance and play pan for hotels and the like now, who would lose revenue now. I had something in it, but the CES raised the issue which was raised in the CDC letter about some mass men and cultural artists who over this period will make a few shillings to see to what extent we can accommodate them in that sort of a package. Of course, there are other components, not just carnival, not just mass, pan, and calypso. There are DJs.
Regional airline LIAT said it will be suspending all passenger services from Saturday, April 4th for a period of 14 days in the first instance, after which the suspension will be reviewed. The airline said the suspension is due to updated impact of COVID-19 as well as the border closures and travel restrictions across the LIAT network that the airline serves. LIAT says all passengers booked during the period of suspension will have their bookings automatically cancelled, and once the resumption of services, passengers will be allowed to rebook via the airline's reservations call center or ticketing offices. In the meantime, LIAT's cargo operations remain open and available for shipping needs. LIAT said it remains committed to ensuring that the region is connected and thanked its staff, customers and stakeholders for their loyalty and understanding during this unprecedented time. And all church services in the Anglican Diocese of the Windward Islands have been suspended until further notice. The announcement was made in a news release issued by the Bishop, the Right Reverend Leopold Friday, who noted his feelings of not being able to celebrate the Holy Eucharist and for parishioners not to receive the body and blood of Christ, especially at this time of Holy Week and Easter. Although the Eucharist is central in the lives of Anglicans, Bishop Friday said that they should be able to suffer this loss in an effort to protect citizens, themselves and their families. He appealed to all Anglicans to take the opportunity to reflect on what they can learn through this experience, as difficult and agonizing as it may be. He said although persons may not recognize how helpful this may be until COVID-19 is over, we must trust that the Lord who promised to be with us always is with us now, and encourage family to pray. The bishop said he is in the process of finalizing the details to have services for Palm Sunday, Good Friday and Easter Sunday pre-recorded at the Anglicans Pastoral Center at New Montrose, and to have these services relay on radio, television and social media on the respective days throughout the diocese. Controlling the controllables, accessing credible sources of information, as well as exercise of faith will assist persons in dealing with the anxiety created by the coronavirus. As the country recorded its second case of the virus, there is a growing sense of anxiety among citizens with a fear of community spread and a possible loss of lives. Speaking with our news team, CEO and founder of the Value Experience, psychologist Dr. Joselle Miller, said there is an overabundance of information as it relates to the coronavirus, which can amplify one's anxiety, and that accessing credible sources of information will be the best way to cope.
Remember, anxiety is natural and normal. However, when it gets to the point that the person is totally unable to cope, the person begins to panic, and that is the thing that we have to keep in check. We have to allow persons to understand that as the feelings begin to get stronger and stronger and uncontrollable, and if a person is feeling overwhelmed, you need to seek help. Okay? As it relates to the coronavirus, we have a lot of questions. And what I realize is that obviously we have different sources of information. Persons are becoming overwhelmed because they are probably going to all of the sources, and in some cases some information may contradict something and creates that restlessness within the individual. What I would suggest at this point, as as we all consider corona, it's a global pandemic, you have to now look at those that are credible. WHO, the CDC, and of course right here in St. Vincent, you have to tap into our ministry Facebook page to get all of the relevant information.
Dr. Miller said the exercise of social distancing and responsible actions can also help to alleviate feelings of anxiety.
Things I tell persons as a practical way for persons to understand this. If you are going for an exam, there's that anticipation and that anxiety that comes with an exam. How do you prepare? You make sure you study hard. So what are the things we have control of? The ability to study and the information available, which means when you think of corona, the things that we can do: wash our hands, practice good hygiene, social distancing, meaning that you don't need to be visiting Tom, Dick and Harry right about now. It means therefore not because our country is not shut down that you have to be all over the place. You have to now exercise wisdom, and you communicate via social media. You stay in your homes unless it's absolutely necessary. You avoid all of that face-to-face interaction.
The psychologist said there may be things that one cannot control, and for these instances, a person's spiritual health can be of great help.
The things that we don't know, we are not sure about, and there are always going to be those variables that we can't respond to, out of our control. This is where your spiritual wellness comes in, because now you have to exercise faith. Just like if you're going for an exam, it means I have studied, I still don't know what is going to come on that exam, but by faith I'm going and I'm thinking that the Lord is going to cover me. And St. Vincent is the home of the blessed. St. Vincent is a very spiritual Christian community. So a lot of persons, instead of throwing caution to the wind, exercise faith, prayer, and we hope for the best.
In other news, 60,000 seedlings will be distributed to farmers as part of the government's food security program. The seedlings will be sold at half of the regular prices at the Orange Hill Biotechnology Center. The purpose of the food security program is to ensure that farmers have the requisite planting materials that they can engage in production to ensure food security in light of the threat of COVID-19. Quality Assurance and Product Development Officer Rohan McDonald said that the seedlings will be released in 2 tranches.
Plants that will be distributed in the first tranche would be watermelon, lettuce, and cucumber. In the second tranche, we'll have a wider range of plants to distribute: tomato, sweet pepper, cabbage, lettuce, cauliflower, eggplants, okra, broccoli, and corn. These would be sold at half price, and this would be done in collaboration with the Agricultural Extension Division, and so they would be the ones who would be in charge of choosing the farmers to participate in the program.
3 farmers who collected their squash and watermelon seedlings on Tuesday spoke on how they feel about being part of the National Food Security Program.
With Corona around, providing food for our country is very important. And I think if we can get self-sufficient in maybe even vegetables, to do our import bill a lot of good. So, here I am today collecting some plants. I wish the best for my crop and for the rest of the farmers who will be taking plants today.
I'm receiving these seedlings because sometimes I get these plants to hand, so I'm very glad. But the problem is getting these plants right now. The whole land get water. Seeing that these plants come here now, no water is not everywhere. Just a little piece of land I have with water.
I am very privileged to be receiving some seedlings from the ministry, being a part of a group, and so I really feel that is a good initiative to help the farmers out, especially in this time where you need food for people in this dry season, and the initiative is a real good one.